We're not done. Oh, you're a good dog. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, today I'm going to give you guys 3 tips on how to get a better contact and how to get your hands better when you're riding. A lot of riders struggle with feeling like their hands are unsteady and bouncing, and they can't get that nice soft contact with the horse's mouth. So tip number 1 is you need to find the correct hand and arm position. Tip number 2 is you need to follow with your elbows. And tip number 3 is you have to improve your seat in order to make your hands better. So those are the 3 tips we're going to cover today. The first one, as far as your hand position, the first thing that's really important to consider is there should be a straight line from your elbow to the horse's mouth. So if I turn to the side here, I wouldn't want to ruin Levi's shade though. Okay, so often it's helpful to imagine, like, if you had really long forearms to where your forearm could reach all the way to the bit and you could hold onto the bit with your elbow bent, obviously, that's what you want to have. That's how important it is to have that straight line. So some of the common things that I see riders do, the most common is riders that ride like this with their arms too straight and their elbows locked out. And when you do this, your whole arm is stiff, and that creates a really stiff and unyielding connection to the horse's mouth. The second thing that a lot of riders do is they ride with their hands too high. And again, you can see if my hands are up here, this line is broken. I have one line that's horizontal to the ground, and then the reins go down. So again, that's not a good thing. Now, the third thing that a lot of riders do is they like to use indirect rein aids. So an indirect rein aid would be where you do this, where your hand goes across the horse's neck. And again, you see how that straight line from the horse's mouth to my elbow is broken if I do this. So don't do that. Often riders neck rein like this when they're not properly using the leg to get the horse to move over. So a lot of the problems with your hands come from trying to fix everything with your hands instead of kind of using your leg to fix your hands and trying to do less with your hands. Now, some of the other common mistakes that people make just with their hand position are either twisting their elbows like this or like that. Those are 2 things you don't want to do, because again, that's going to create tension. And the other one is that when you're holding your rein, your hand should be parallel to the angle of the horse's shoulders. So more or less, your thumb should be up and your palms should be facing each other. If you're doing this, if you have piano hands, that locks the bones in your forearm and it's going to create stiffness. If you're doing this and twisting your hands outwards, again, you know, we have 2 bones in our forearm, and when those bones are crossed, when your wrist is twisted, it locks out your arm. So no motorcycle hands, no piano hands. So make sure that you have that nice straight line from elbow to mouth. Now, when you are riding, so when I'm walking, if I just let my horse go on a loose rein and I'm walking here, the horse's neck a little bit nods in the motion of the walk. So as the horse is walking, if they are walking well, they have a little bit of a nod to their head as they're walking. So at the walk and the canter, your elbows have to follow this nod in the horse's head. Otherwise, you are going to get where the bit in the horse's mouth kind of jerks and then is empty. So as I take up the reins here in the walk, you can see my elbows are following the motion of that walk, as is my seat. Now, if I stop my arm from following, you see what happens. Right away, he braces, he starts kind of chomping on the bit, and the walk motion goes away. So it's really important, especially at the walk, that you have that following elbow, because if you lock the elbow, it's going to cause the horse to brace the neck and not to move forward. Now at posting trot, same thing, a little bit as I'm posting in the trot here, my elbow is just ever so slightly bending and straightening. It's not huge, you probably can't even really see it, but it's really important that you have a little bit this, because if your elbow is locked when you're posting, your hands are going to be doing this. So if I lock my elbows, my hands are now posting with the horse, and that's not a good thing. And again, the canter is another gait where the horse a little bit nods their head, and it's important that if you want to get a nice steady contact, first of all, you think about that nice straight line from your elbow to the horse's mouth, and then you have to think about your elbows are following. So when my upper body goes forward, my elbows bend. When my upper body goes back, my elbows get a little straighter, but not totally straight. So it's bend straight, bend straight, bend straight, bend straight, bend straight, bend straight. Now, in order to follow like this, you have to have the correct hand position. If your hands are too high, you can't follow with your elbows. If your hands are too low and locked, you can't follow with your elbows. And you see how when I do this, my horse gets kind of stiff and he's not moving as well through his back and through his top line. So my third tip, like I mentioned before, there's a quote that says, no seat, no hands. So if you're having trouble with your hands, it's probably because your seat is not good enough. So if your butt is slapping in the saddle like this, if you're not glued into the saddle and absorbing the motion of the horse, that's going to cause your hands to be unsteady and interrupt the motion of the horse's gait. Good boy, Ozzy. So I hope that helps you guys with your hand position, and let me know in the comments if that's helpful or what other questions you have about how to keep your hands quieter and get better contact with your horse.